A warm welcome to the chosen ones, those set apart, called out, and marked by heaven for a divine assignment on earth. You didn't stumble across this by accident. You are here because destiny is calling your name. There's a stirring in your spirit because heaven is trying to get your attention. You've been feeling something shifting, unseen, yet undeniable, as if the ground beneath your feet is preparing for something greater. You are not being shaken to break, but to awaken. The pain, the confusion, the delay, it's all part of a divine pattern designed to position you, not punish you. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're under attack? Not just physically or emotionally, but spiritually, like something invisible is trying to drain your strength, cloud your clarity, and silence your progress? You're not imagining it. The intensity you're feeling is not random. When you draw closer to divine purpose, warfare always increases. The closer you get to your promise, the louder the resistance becomes. But here's what you must understand. The enemy doesn't fight what doesn't threaten him. The fact that you're under attack is proof that you are carrying something powerful. You see, destiny attracts warfare the same way light attracts insects. The moment you begin to walk in obedience, darkness notices. You're not just in a struggle, you are in a strategic battle for your purpose, your peace, and your mind. But here's the good news. You're not alone in the fight. Heaven backs you. God has already assigned angels to your steps, grace to your process, and strength for every valley. You are surrounded by divine help even when you can't see it. But before we talk about victory, we must expose the real battlefield. It's not your job, your finances, or your relationships. The battle begins in the mind. Before poverty ever touches your wallet, it infects your thoughts. Before fear ever grips your heart, it whispers into your imagination. Before delay ever appears in your life, it's sown as doubt in your mind. The devil's greatest weapon has never been power, it's deception. He doesn't need to destroy you if he can distract you. He doesn't need to take your blessing if he can take your belief. And that's why today I want to open your eyes to something most believers never see clearly: the invisible war between divine provision and spiritual poverty. Because poverty is not about money, it's about mindset. It's not about what's in your hand, it's about what's in your head. It's a spiritual infestation that hides behind lack, exhaustion, and striving. It disguises itself as financial struggle, but its true goal is to disconnect you from the revelation of your source. Poverty makes you chase what God already promised to provide. The greatest mistake believers make is trying to fight spiritual poverty with natural tools, with more work, more hustle, more anxiety, when it takes a revelation to break a spirit. The spirit of poverty cannot be defeated by budgets alone. It is broken by truth. And there's a passage that holds the key, a psalm not just of comfort, but of warfare, Psalm 23. Most read it as poetry, but it's actually a declaration of dominion. It begins with a defiant statement. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Those words are not soft. They are spiritual rebellion against lack, fear, and scarcity. When David wrote those words, he wasn't in a palace. He was a fugitive, hiding in caves, running from enemies, with nothing but a promise to hold on to. Yet he said, I lack nothing. How? Because revelation is wealth. He understood that the shepherd was not distant. He was present. He was guiding. He was providing. When you understand who your shepherd is, you stop praying like a beggar and start standing like an heir. So let me ask you, who is your provider? Is it your employer, your savings, your skill? Because whatever you call your provider becomes your master. And whatever becomes your master determines your peace. If your job is your provider, then when the job shakes, your faith shakes. But if the Lord is your shepherd, then even when income shifts, your identity stays secure. Poverty begins where trust ends. This is why Psalm 23 is dangerous to the enemy. It reorders your dependence. It shifts your focus from the visible to the invisible, from striving to surrender, from anxiety to assurance. It declares that I will not be led by fear or famine because my shepherd governs my supply. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's divine confidence built on revelation, not circumstance. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's more than a verse, it's a verdict. It is heaven's decree over your house, your career, your children, your future. It silences the voice that says you're behind, you're forgotten, you'll never have enough. Because when the shepherd is present, lack becomes an illusion, provision becomes a promise. So today, as we begin this journey, understand this: you are not fighting for provision, you are fighting for perspective. The battle is not about money, it's about mastery. The enemy wants to rule your emotions, control your peace, and steal your rest. But God is restoring order, starting in your mind. You are about to see Psalm 23 not as a memory verse, but as a manual for victory. Because this is not just about surviving, it's about shifting from fear to faith, from scarcity to stewardship, from worry to worship. The shepherd is leading you out of the wilderness of striving into the pastures of peace. And this is just the beginning. The journey ahead will reveal not only how God provides, but how He positions, protects, and prospers you. Because where the Lord leads, lack cannot follow. Before money ever disappears from your account, before your pantry runs dry, before opportunity seems to vanish from your life, the real battle begins inside your mind. Poverty doesn't start with empty pockets. It starts with empty faith. It is not the absence of money, but the absence of revelation, an invisible mindset that makes you believe you are cut off from the shepherd's care. You see, the most dangerous kind of poverty is not financial, it is spiritual. Because once the enemy convinces you that you are abandoned, you start living like a beggar, even when heaven has already written your name on an inheritance. This is why David begins his psalm not by asking, but by declaring, "The Lord is my shepherd." Those words carry authority. They break the pattern of fear. They silence the whisper of insufficiency that says you'll never have enough. David isn't making a wish. He's making a statement of identity. He's saying, I know who leads me. I know who feeds me. I know who I belong to. When that truth takes root in your spirit, lack loses its power. Because lack cannot govern what revelation has already liberated. Most of us live chasing provision as if God were hiding it somewhere, waiting to see how hard we work to earn it. But provision was never designed to be chased. It was designed to follow obedience. The sheep do not worry about the next meal. They simply follow the shepherd. Wherever he leads, there is food, water, and safety. The same principle applies to your life. God never asked you to become your own provider. He asked you to trust his leading. Yet many believers have mistaken striving for faith. We call it diligence, but often it's fear disguised as responsibility. I once spoke with a man who told me, I feel like I'm running in circles, doing everything I can, but I'm still stuck. I asked him what he was chasing. He said, security. And I realized he had made security his shepherd. His decisions, his prayers, his emotions, all followed the voice of fear rather than faith. The spirit of poverty always sounds reasonable. It always says, just a little more, just one more job, one more plan, one more backup. But in truth, it keeps you in motion without ever letting you arrive. That's why the opening of Psalm 23 is not poetic comfort, it's spiritual warfare. Every time you declare, the Lord is my shepherd, you are cutting ties with the spirit of independence that says, I must do this on my own. You are renouncing the lie that your worth is measured by your wealth. You are reminding your soul that your life is governed by a divine source, not a human system. When you truly understand that, you begin to walk differently. Your prayers shift from begging to believing. Your posture changes from anxiety to assurance. The moment you stop chasing provision and start following the shepherd, the entire order of your life changes. You begin to see that abundance is not an accident. It's alignment. God never runs out of resources. Only people run out of revelation. And when revelation fills the soul, poverty loses its foundation, because poverty feeds on confusion. It thrives in the dark corners of doubt where we question God's faithfulness. But revelation brings light, and in the light, deception cannot survive. You see, when David says, I shall not want, he's not talking about never desiring anything again. He's talking about a state of inner rest, a peace so deep that external circumstances lose their power to define him. It's not that he has everything, but that he lacks nothing essential. That's what the shepherd provides. Contentment, not complacency. Because real prosperity isn't measured by accumulation, but by alignment. It's not how much you have, it's how closely you walk with the one who provides it. Think about this. Sheep never wake up wondering if the grass will grow tomorrow. They don't check the weather forecast. They simply graze where the shepherd leads. But humans, made in the image of God, often trust less than sheep. We worry, we compare, we panic, we allow scarcity to dictate our peace. Yet every time we do, we drift further from divine rhythm. The shepherd's way is slower, quieter, and deeply intentional. He doesn't rush because he already knows where the provision is. The question is not whether he will provide, it's whether you'll stay close enough to receive it. There's a profound truth hidden here. God's provision is not found in places, it's found in presence. The Lord doesn't send blessings, he brings them with him. When you have him, you have access to everything you need. That's why David didn't say, the Lord gives me what I want. He said, I shall not want. The difference is subtle but powerful. It's not about getting what you desire. It's about desiring what you already have in him. And the spirit of poverty makes you restless, always searching for the next opportunity, the next door, the next promise. It keeps your eyes on the horizon instead of the shepherd standing beside you. But the moment you realize that he is enough, your striving ceases. You begin to live from rest, not for rest. That's when peace returns. That's when doors open effortlessly, not because you chased them, but because you followed his voice. So let me say this clearly. God doesn't want to just change your income. He wants to change your insight, because if he increases what you have without renewing how you think, the same mindset will recreate the same lack. He's after transformation, not transaction. When you begin to see him as your shepherd, you stop measuring your worth by what's missing and start celebrating what's present. You stop asking, do I have enough? And start declaring, the Lord is my source, and in him I lack nothing. That's the foundation of abundance, not wealth, but revelation. It's the moment your mind comes into agreement with heaven's truth. From that point on, everything begins to shift. The same world looks different because your perspective is different. You realize that provision isn't coming, it's already here. It's in his leading, his timing, his presence. And when you walk with that awareness, the spirit of poverty no longer has a voice in your life, because where revelation lives, lack dies. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Those words may sound simple, but they carry the weight of a divine contradiction. Because if you look around, the world doesn't know how to lie down. We rush, we grind, we wake up tired and go to bed anxious, chasing success while losing our peace in the process. The system of this world teaches that rest is weakness, that slowing down means you're falling behind. But God in his quiet authority commands the opposite. He makes me lie down. It's not a suggestion, it's an act of love that interrupts the chaos. Think about that. The shepherd isn't asking you if you want to rest. He's telling you it's time to, because he knows what your soul has forgotten, that rest is not the reward after you've done enough. Rest is the rhythm that allows you to hear him again. The green pastures aren't a vacation spot. They're a divine classroom where God reteaches you how to breathe, how to trust, how to be. When David says, he makes me, it reveals something about human nature. We resist peace. We resist slowing down. We live as if busyness equals importance. We fill our calendars and call it productivity. But sometimes it's just fear wearing a different outfit. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that if we stop, everything will collapse. The spirit of poverty thrives in that mindset. It convinces you that if you rest, you'll lose. It ties your identity to performance, making you believe that your worth depends on what you produce. But the shepherd's voice cuts through that noise. Lie down, he says. There's provision right under your feet. Green pastures represent more than food. They represent sufficiency. They are places of abundance already prepared before you arrived. The shepherd doesn't lead you to dry ground. He leads you to provision that can sustain you. Yet so many believers stand in their green pastures but never lie down. They are surrounded by blessings but can't enjoy them because their minds are still running in survival mode. I once met a woman who worked 3 jobs, raising 2 children on her own. Every time I saw her, she looked exhausted, worn thin by responsibility. She told me, "I can't stop. If I stop, everything falls apart." I asked her gently, "What if that's the lie that's keeping you from seeing the miracle?" She paused. Then she said, "But how do I rest when there's still so much to fix?" I opened my Bible and read, "He makes me lie down in green pastures." And I told her, sometimes the greatest act of faith is to stop moving, to trust that God can manage what you've been micromanaging. A few months later, she came back with tears in her eyes. She had cut down her workload, spent more time at home, and in that time of stillness, opportunities began to appear. 1 job promotion, unexpected help with childcare, and most of all, peace. "It wasn't that my problems disappeared," she said, "but I finally stopped trying to be my own provider." That's the power of obedience. When you rest in God's rhythm, you make space for heaven to move. Green pastures aren't just about money or food. They are about divine order. God provides in peace. The enemy provides in panic. The shepherd never feeds his sheep in chaos. He prepares the place first. He creates an environment where you can receive without striving. That's why Psalm 23 is not about running. It's about resting in the presence of provision. Rest doesn't mean idleness. It means alignment. It's the internal posture of a soul that trusts God's timing. Many people are living proof that exhaustion is not the same as effectiveness. They're moving fast but going nowhere. They're working harder than ever but producing less peace, less joy, less purpose. Because rest is not the absence of activity, it's the presence of clarity. When your mind is still, you can hear divine instruction. When your spirit is quiet, you can sense divine timing. And that's when fruitfulness becomes natural, not forced. Even creation testifies to this truth. The earth itself rests. The soil must lie fallow to renew its nutrients. The ocean withdraws before it releases another wave. Trees go dormant in winter to survive and bloom again in spring. Everything God made carries the rhythm of rest. Only humans fight against it. We treat rest like it's optional when it's actually sacred. The Sabbath wasn't designed to restrict us. It was designed to restore us. God himself rested, not because he was tired, but because he was finished. The spirit of poverty hates rest because rest is proof of trust. It wants you to stay in constant motion, thinking that rest is a luxury you can't afford. But what if rest is the very key that unlocks the next level of provision? What if your breakthrough doesn't come through more effort, but through surrender? That's the paradox of faith. Sometimes God multiplies what you lay down, not what you pick up. He makes me lie down means he loves me enough to stop me before I break myself. It means he sees my exhaustion before I admit it. It means he provides what I need, not just what I want. And in green pastures means he doesn't settle for less than abundance. The shepherd doesn't lead his flock into deserts. Even when you walk through a hard season, there is still provision hidden within it. But you can't see green when your eyes are fixed on the grind. So if you've been restless lately, if you've been running without direction, maybe the shepherd is trying to make you lie down. Maybe he's preparing green pastures beneath the very ground you've been rushing across. Don't confuse motion with progress. Don't mistake striving for success. The greatest victories are often born in stillness. Rest is not the end of productivity, it's the beginning of clarity, because once you lie down in green pastures, your heart begins to recover, your faith resets, your mind becomes still enough to hear the next instruction, and that's when you realize that the shepherd's goal was never to make you busier, but to make you whole. He leads me beside still waters. Few lines in scripture hold such quiet strength. It's not just an image of beauty, it's a revelation of rhythm. In a world that celebrates chaos, God leads differently. His path doesn't rush, it restores. Still waters are not merely a scene of calm, they're a statement of divine leadership. Because where God leads, confusion loses its voice. Where He guides, peace becomes your compass. The phrase, "He leads me," already tells us something profound. I am not the one in control. The shepherd leads and I follow. But following requires trust. Trust that His route, even when it winds through uncertainty, knows where it's going. Still waters are not the beginning of the journey. They're the result of obedience. You don't find peace by demanding it. You find it by being led into it. When David wrote those words, he was describing more than a physical landscape. He was revealing a spiritual condition, the kind of inner stability that comes only when your soul is anchored in God's presence. Still waters symbolize a life governed by divine order, not emotional turbulence. They represent clarity, not confusion, faith, not fear. The spirit of poverty can't thrive there because it feeds on panic and scarcity. It loses its power when the heart is at peace. You've probably noticed it. The worst decisions you've ever made likely came in moments of restlessness. Anxiety clouds judgment. Fear distorts perception. In chaos, we grasp for quick fixes, we overreact, we misjudge people, we make promises we can't keep. But peace slows everything down. Peace gives perspective. When your soul is calm, wisdom rises to the surface. And that's why the shepherd leads you beside still waters, because he knows clarity cannot live in noise. I once counseled a young man named Marcus who was constantly moving, new jobs, new projects, new plans, always searching for the next thing that would finally make him feel secure. But every new pursuit left him emptier than before. He said, "I keep praying for peace, but I never feel it." I asked him, "Do you ever stay still long enough for peace to find you?" He looked down, silent. His whole life was motion without meaning. We prayed, and I told him to take a week, no networking, no side hustles, no frantic emails, and to spend it simply in quiet devotion, listening, journaling, resting. He called me days later, his voice different, slower, grounded. "It feels like my mind finally stopped running," he said. "I think I heard God for the first time in years." That's the secret. Peace isn't something you create, it's something you allow. Still waters exist, but you must let Him lead you there. The shepherd doesn't drag you, He guides you patiently, gently, but He can only lead a heart that's willing to slow down. Still waters also mean stability. The word still doesn't mean stagnant, it means settled. It's water deep enough to refresh, calm enough to reflect. In turbulent water, everything looks distorted. You can't see your own reflection, you can't measure depth. But in still water, you see clearly God, yourself, and your surroundings. That's what peace does. It reveals truth. You start to see people for who they really are. You start to discern opportunities, not chase them. You recognize when something is from God and when it's not. Peace becomes the filter through which you make every decision. Many people live on emotional rapids, constantly reacting, constantly moving, never grounded. But peace, real peace, is the ability to remain unmoved while everything around you shifts. The spirit of poverty wants you reactive. It wants you to panic every time the bills come, to doubt every time something delays, to assume every closed door means rejection. But the shepherd's presence says otherwise. Still waters remind you that timing is divine, that lack is temporary, that your future is not falling apart, it's unfolding. When Jesus stood in the storm with His disciples, He didn't shout louder than the wind. He simply said, "Peace, be still." The power of those words wasn't in their volume, it was in their authority. He didn't need to calm the sea to prove His strength. He calmed it to reveal that true authority begins within. The same God who commands storms also commands your heart to rest. And when your heart obeys, the storms around you start to lose their influence. There's something else hidden in that verse. David doesn't say, "He brings still waters to me." He says, "He leads me beside them," which means peace is not always found where you are. It's found where He's taking you. Some of the unrest you're feeling is not because you're under attack, but because you've outgrown where you are. The shepherd is leading you to a new environment, one where your soul can breathe again. But you can't carry chaos into calm places. You must let go of what's noisy before you can receive what's still. Still waters are also symbolic of healing. Turbulent water can't heal, it can only drown. But still waters restore. They allow you to see your wounds, to face what's broken, to receive what you've been avoiding. Many people stay busy to avoid healing, afraid that if they stop, the pain will catch up to them. But God doesn't lead you beside still waters to expose your pain. He leads you there to wash it away. When your soul finds that stillness, everything changes. You stop fighting people who were never your enemies. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop chasing after what's already yours. You begin to live from peace, not for peace. That's a completely different kind of strength. It's the strength of someone who knows they are led, not lost. So if life has been loud lately, if your thoughts have been racing, your emotions restless, maybe it's time to stop asking for more strength and start asking for more stillness. Because stillness is strength in disguise. It's where clarity lives, where faith breathes, and where God's voice becomes unmistakably clear. The shepherd doesn't lead through panic, he leads through peace. And once you learn to follow his rhythm, you'll find that still waters are not a destination, they're a way of living. A state of being where storms may rage around you, but inside your soul remains calm, anchored, and confident in the shepherd's care. He restores my soul. Few phrases in Scripture carry such quiet power. Restoration is more than repair, it is renewal, God bringing something back to its original strength, dignity, and design. When David wrote these words, he wasn't speaking about physical healing or comfort. He was describing the most intimate work God can do in a human being, the restoration of the inner life, the rebuilding of the soul that has been worn thin by years of striving, disappointment, and fear. Because here's the truth, most people don't realize how tired their soul really is. We know when our body is exhausted, when our finances are strained, when our plans fail, but few can recognize a weary soul. It's that quiet fatigue that lingers even after you've slept. It's the emptiness that success can't fill, the unease that applause can't silence. It's when you're functioning but no longer feeling. That's the condition David knew well. He had victories, but he also had scars. He had songs, but he also had silence. And in that silence, he found a shepherd who didn't just fix what was broken, he restored what had been lost. To restore means to give back what was stolen, and the enemy has been stealing from people for years. Peace, confidence, joy, dreams. Some losses are visible, others are internal. You can look whole on the outside, yet be shattered within. That's why restoration begins in places no one else can see. God doesn't start with your circumstances. He starts with your spirit. He doesn't just adjust your life. He rewrites your identity. A woman once came to me after service, eyes red from crying. "I think I've lost myself," she whispered. "I don't even recognize who I am anymore." I could see the exhaustion in her. Life had taken more than it had given. She'd spent years trying to be strong for everyone else until she didn't know what strength meant anymore. I told her, "You haven't lost yourself. You've been buried under the weight of everything you thought you had to carry." And the shepherd is here to lift that weight we prayed. Not for money, not for miracles, just for restoration. Weeks later, she told me, "It feels like my soul is breathing again." That's what David meant. Restoration is not external, it's internal oxygen. It's when God breathes into the parts of you that have gone numb and says, "Live again." It's the return of sensitivity, the revival of passion, the quiet recovery of joy. It's what happens when the shepherd touches the unseen parts of you that the world can't reach. But there's a key to this. God can only restore what you surrender. Many people ask for renewal but refuse to release what's ruining them. You can't hold on to bitterness and expect peace to return. You can't keep replaying failure and expect confidence to grow. Restoration begins with release. The shepherd can't heal wounds you keep reopening. That's why David could say, "He restores my soul." It wasn't just a hope. It was the testimony of a man who had finally stopped fighting the process. The soul is the center of thought, emotion, and will. When it's wounded, Everything else fragments. That's why broken souls make broken decisions. A weary soul seeks comfort instead of calling, validation instead of vision. It settles for survival because it no longer believes in restoration. But when God renews the soul, everything else aligns. Choices become clearer. Relationships heal. Purpose reignites. Because a restored soul doesn't chase peace, it carries it. There's a story in Scripture that mirrors this truth. In Luke 4:18, Jesus stood and declared, "He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted." That was his mission statement, the restoration of humanity's inner life. Poverty, fear, shame, and addiction all begin in the heart. They are not merely conditions of circumstance, they are conditions of the soul. And Jesus didn't come just to free people from sin. He came to restore what sin had stolen, the image of God within us. That's why restoration is not repair. When something is repaired, it may still carry the marks of its damage. But when something is restored, it's renewed to its original intent. God doesn't just patch you up, He redefines you. He takes the fragments and fashions them into something stronger than before. And sometimes He allows certain things to break, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you in a form that better reflects His glory. I think of a young man named Elias who once came to a counseling session after losing his business. He felt humiliated, convinced that his future was over. "I failed everyone," he said. "I feel worthless." I asked him, what if this failure isn't the end but the reset? Over time, he began to see that the collapse of what he built was not punishment, it was pruning. God wasn't taking from him, He was restoring him. Months later, Elias started again, not with desperation, but with direction. And what he built the second time had peace at its foundation, not pressure. Restoration doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. The shepherd takes what was painful and transforms it into wisdom. He takes what was stolen and turns it into strength. That's why David could say, "He restores my soul," not "He restored." It's continuous. Restoration is not a moment, it's a rhythm. Every day the shepherd invites you back into wholeness. Every day He renews your thoughts, heals your emotions, and strengthens your resolve. We live in a culture that praises resilience but neglects restoration. We applaud those who keep going, but few stop to ask if they're going in the right direction. God is not impressed by motion. He's moved by surrender. The most courageous thing you can do is allow Him to restore what you've been pretending is fine. There is a peace that no promotion can provide, a freedom no success can replicate. It's the stillness that comes when the soul is whole again, when you no longer need to prove your worth or earn your rest, when you can sit in silence and still feel complete. That's what David found in the fields. Not fame, not fortune, but restoration. And that's what the shepherd offers you now. Not escape from your life, but renewal within it. He restores my soul, not once, not sometimes, but continuously. Because as long as you live in a world that drains you, you will need a shepherd who can fill you again. And the good news is, He never runs out. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. That single line is both direction and identity. It's not just about being moral, it's about being aligned. Righteousness is not simply the absence of wrongdoing, it is the presence of divine order. It's when your thoughts, choices, and timing move in rhythm with heaven's will. The shepherd doesn't just restore your soul and leave you wandering. He leads you toward a way of living that honors His name. Every step has a purpose, even the ones that feel like detours. Most people think righteousness is a list of rules, things you avoid, habits you must break. But David understood it differently. To walk in righteousness means to be guided by truth. It's a path, not a prison. It's a process of alignment, not perfection. When you walk in that path, your life becomes a testimony. Everything you do, how you treat people, how you manage your time, how you face adversity, begins to reflect the character of the shepherd who leads you. That's what it means to walk for His name's sake, to live in a way that reveals the faithfulness of the one you follow. But let's be honest, being led by God is not always easy. The paths of righteousness are often narrow, and they rarely look like shortcuts. Sometimes obedience feels like delay. Sometimes God leads you down routes that make no sense at first. Yet those paths are never random. They are crafted to build your spirit, to refine your heart, to teach you dependence. What looks like a setback is often a setup, a divine rerouting that keeps you from something that would have derailed you. I once spoke with a man who had lost an opportunity he'd prayed for, a position he believed would change everything. He couldn't understand why God had closed that door. Months later, the company collapsed in scandal. That disappointment saved him. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. That's what happens when the shepherd leads you. You may not understand every turn, but you can trust the destination. The path of righteousness doesn't always feel righteous while you're walking it. It can take you through valleys, through waiting seasons, through times when nothing seems to move. But those are the moments when your faith matures. God isn't just blessing you, He's building you. Every trial that tests your obedience deepens your authority. Every no that God gives protects you from a version of yourself not yet ready for the next level. And here's what's remarkable. God doesn't lead you in righteousness for your reputation. He does it for His. For His name's sake means His honor is connected to your journey. That means He takes personal responsibility for your outcome. You are not walking alone, trying to make life work. You are walking in a covenant where His credibility is on the line. That's why you can trust Him even when the path feels uncertain. The shepherd will never lead you somewhere that will compromise His character. The paths of righteousness also represent systems, divine principles that govern increase and peace. The world operates on shortcuts, manipulation, greed, deception. But the kingdom operates on truth, integrity, and order. You can gain the world's success by cutting corners, but you lose peace in the process. The shepherd's path might seem slower, but it's secure. It builds foundations that storms cannot shake. Think of Joseph. His path led through betrayal, prison, and misunderstanding. By human standards, nothing about that journey looked right, yet every step, every painful turn was positioning him for purpose. When he finally stood before Pharaoh, he wasn't just promoted, he was prepared. That's what the paths of righteousness do. They prepare you for what prayer alone cannot. They shape your character so that when the promise arrives, you can sustain it. The spirit of poverty thrives on impatience. It pushes people to rush, to grasp, to settle. It says, you don't have time to wait. Take matters into your own hands. But righteousness moves differently. It's deliberate. It trusts the shepherd's timing. It believes that divine order will always produce divine outcome. The path may be slow, but it's steady, and everything born from it lasts. I remember a young woman named Naomi who was desperate for her business to grow. She wanted instant results, viral attention, fast success, but doors kept closing. She grew frustrated, feeling forgotten. During a prayer meeting, she said, I feel like I'm walking in circles. I told her, maybe you're not walking in circles, maybe you're walking in preparation. Months later, she learned that one of those delays allowed her to meet a mentor who reshaped her entire strategy. What felt like stagnation was actually structure. Today, her company thrives, not because she ran, but because she followed. Righteousness is not about pace, it's about posture. It's the willingness to be led when you don't understand the road. It's saying, God, I trust your pace more than my plan. And when you live like that, peace replaces pressure. You stop forcing outcomes and start flowing in alignment. That's when life begins to move with supernatural ease, not because it's effortless, but because it's ordered. Let's look closer at the phrase, for his name's sake. It means your story is part of his story. You're not walking to make yourself look good. You're walking so that others can see what God can do through someone who yields. Every time you choose righteousness over convenience, patience over panic, faith over fear, heaven's name is glorified. That's how the shepherd's reputation spreads, through the lives of those who follow him faithfully. And maybe that's what righteousness really is, alignment that makes you recognizable. When people see you walk with integrity, when they notice peace where others would panic, when they sense stability in your decisions, they begin to see him. The shepherd's guidance reflected through your life becomes a living testimony. So the next time the path feels slow, remember, righteousness is rarely rushed. God's ways may seem delayed, but they are never derailed. He leads you not just toward blessing, but toward becoming. Every step, every delay, Every test is shaping something eternal inside you. You're not walking aimlessly. You're being led by purpose. And when you finally look back, you'll see what David saw, that every twist, every valley, every waiting season had meaning, because the shepherd never wastes a step. He leads you in paths of righteousness, not for convenience, not for applause, but for his name's sake, so that through your life his faithfulness can be seen, his wisdom can be known, and his glory can be revealed. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. There's a sacred power in those words, a kind of peace that only people who have faced darkness can truly understand. David isn't speaking as a poet here. He's speaking as a survivor. He's describing the moment when faith stops being theory and becomes breath. The valley is not a metaphor for suffering alone. It is the proving ground of trust. Everyone wants mountaintop faith, but valleys are where faith matures. Notice something subtle. David doesn't say, if I walk through the valley. He says, though I walk through it. The valley is not a possibility. It's a certainty. No life escapes it. There will be seasons when light seems dim, when prayers feel unanswered, when strength runs low and you begin to wonder if God is still near. And yet, that's where the shepherd's presence becomes undeniable. Because in the valley, when all else fades, he reveals that he was never behind you, he was beside you all along. Fear thrives in shadows. It exaggerates what you can't see. It whispers worst-case scenarios. It feeds off uncertainty. But a shadow, by definition, only exists because there is light somewhere nearby. The valley of the shadow of death is not the valley of death itself. It's the shadow, the echo of fear, not the substance of it. And shadows can't harm you. They can only intimidate you. The shepherd walks with you to remind you that light still exists even when you can't see its source. This verse is not about avoiding darkness, it's about walking through it. The shepherd doesn't build a bridge to skip the valley. He walks you across it step by step, because every valley carries a revelation that mountaintops cannot give, the awareness that God's presence is not conditional. In the valley, you discover that faith isn't about escape, it's about endurance. It's the quiet decision to keep walking when you don't understand. I once spoke with a man named Daniel who had just lost his wife. He said, "Everyone tells me to be strong, but I don't even know what that means anymore." We sat in silence for a while before he said something I'll never forget. "I can't feel God, but I think he's still here." That sentence, fragile as it was, carried more faith than 1,000 sermons, because real faith is not loud, it's loyal. It's the willingness to keep believing even when the evidence disappears. That's what David meant when he said, "I will fear no evil." It wasn't because evil didn't exist, it was because evil had lost its power to define him. Fear no longer dictated his direction. The valley might have been real, but so was the shepherd. The two realities coexisted, and one overruled the other. When you walk with awareness of his presence, the shadows shrink. The threats remain, but their authority dissolves. Fear has always been the enemy's oldest weapon. It doesn't need to destroy you, it just needs to paralyze you. Fear keeps people from moving, from trusting, from stepping into the unknown. It makes the valley feel endless. But courage is not the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear lead. When you say, "I will fear no evil," you are reclaiming authority over your emotions. You're declaring that presence is greater than perception, that the God within you is stronger than the darkness around you. Sometimes the valley is not external, it's internal. It's the battle of the mind, the endless cycle of worry and doubt that keeps you trapped in invisible cages. The valley of the shadow of death can look like depression, confusion, burnout, or spiritual numbness. It can be the silent place where your hope runs out and your prayers sound empty. And yet the shepherd whispers the same truth. You are not alone. When you learn to sense God in the valley, you stop depending on outcomes to validate his presence. You realize he's not just the God of deliverance, he's the God of endurance. He doesn't only show up in victories, he sustains you through battles. That's why David could keep walking. The valley wasn't permanent. Through means transition. It's not a grave, it's a passageway. The shepherd doesn't lead you into darkness to abandon you. He leads you through it to transform you. Valleys also have purpose. They humble the proud, deepen compassion, and clarify vision. It's in the valley that self-reliance dies and surrender is born. It's where your prayers become raw, your motives pure, and your dependence total. The mountaintop may reveal your strength, but the valley reveals your shepherd. I remember a young woman named Leah who had been waiting years for healing. When nothing changed, she grew bitter. She said, "I think I've lost my faith." But over time, something shifted. She stopped praying for the valley to end and started asking for strength to walk through it. "I realized," she said, "that I was waiting for rescue when God was offering me relationship." That's the secret. Sometimes the miracle isn't deliverance, it's endurance with peace. When you walk through the valley aware of His presence, something sacred happens. You stop fearing what's around you and start focusing on who's within you. Your prayers become less about escape and more about intimacy. You begin to sense that His nearness is the true reward, because the valley, for all its shadows, is where the shepherd's voice becomes clearest. And notice the language shift. "He leads me" becomes "you are with me." In the valley, David stops talking about God and starts talking to Him. Distance becomes dialogue. Relationship replaces religion. That's the heart of the psalm, presence, not performance. When you finally realize that the shepherd is not a distant guide, but an ever-present companion, fear loses its foothold. Maybe that's the message for you now. You might not be on a mountain. You might be walking through shadows that seem endless. But the fact that you're still walking means grace hasn't left you. Every step you take is an act of faith that tells the darkness, "You can surround me, but you can't stop me." The valley doesn't define you, it refines you. It strips away what's unnecessary, strengthens what's eternal, and teaches you that peace is not found in the absence of pain, but in the awareness of presence. And when you finally emerge, because you will, you'll realize that the valley was never meant to break you. It was meant to prove that even in shadows, the light still follows you. "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." To anyone outside the fold, that line sounds strange. Comfort found in a rod, peace found in a staff. But to a shepherd, those two objects are symbols of both protection and direction. The rod defends, the staff guides. One represents authority, the other intimacy. And together they reveal the dual nature of God's love, firm yet gentle, powerful yet personal. David understood this language because he lived it. He had wielded a shepherd's rod himself, not to harm his sheep, but to protect them from wolves. The rod was short, strong, and heavy, a weapon of defense against predators. When he said, "Your rod comforts me," he was saying, "I find peace in knowing you will fight for me." The staff, on the other hand, was long and curved at the top, designed to pull a wandering sheep back to safety or lift one out of a ditch. It was a tool of correction, yes, but correction rooted in care. The shepherd doesn't use his staff to shame. He uses it to restore. This verse reveals something profound about divine comfort. It doesn't always come from soft things. Sometimes comfort comes through correction. Sometimes God's love feels like discipline. His peace feels like pressure. And His presence feels like confrontation. But that too is love. The shepherd would rather correct you than lose you. He would rather tap your side with the rod now than watch you walk off a cliff later. Real comfort isn't the absence of confrontation. It's the assurance that even correction has purpose. We live in an age that avoids correction. Everyone wants guidance without accountability, grace without growth, blessings without boundaries. But the rod and staff remind us that divine love doesn't just protect us from the enemy. It protects us from ourselves. It saves us from our impulses, from our wandering hearts, from decisions that feel right but lead to ruin. The shepherd knows what you can't see. He knows where the wolves hide, where the paths turn slippery, and where the terrain becomes dangerous. His rod and staff aren't tools of control. They are instruments of care. I once met a man who said, "I just want God to open doors for me." But as he spoke, I realized he was frustrated, not because doors were closed, but because some had been slammed shut. "Maybe," I told him, "the shepherd isn't closing doors to punish you, but to protect you. Some places look like opportunity, but lead to injury. He paused, silent. A year later, he returned and said, I see it now. What I thought was rejection was actually redirection. That's the rod in action, God defending you from invisible dangers. But let's talk about the staff, the symbol of guidance. Life has a way of pulling us off track, slowly, subtly. You don't always notice when you're drifting. It starts with a small compromise, a neglected prayer, a delayed act of obedience. Before long, you're farther from peace than you realized. Yet the shepherd never shouts from a distance. He reaches out. That's what the staff does. It draws you back in. And when he does, he doesn't condemn. He simply says, I still have you. That's the sound of grace. The comfort of the rod and staff also comes from familiarity. Sheep recognize the shepherd's touch. They know the difference between correction and cruelty. They don't fear the rod because they've learned that it never strikes in anger. It moves in purpose. In the same way, when you walk closely with God, even his correction brings comfort. You stop fearing his hand because you've learned his heart. Some of the most painful seasons in your life weren't attacks. They were adjustments. You called them setbacks, but heaven called them safeguards. God removed relationships that would have drained you, delayed plans that would have destroyed you, disrupted patterns that were quietly leading you astray. That's the rod and staff working together, one striking the danger, the other steering you home. Think about this. A shepherd's tools only comfort sheep that stay close. The farther you wander, the less you feel their protection. That's why intimacy with God isn't optional, it's essential. The shepherd can't guide from a distance. You have to walk near enough to hear his footsteps, close enough to feel his nudge. Too many people live on the edge of his voice, aware of his existence but out of reach of his correction. But peace lives in proximity. The closer you walk, the safer you feel. David said, they comfort me, not they scare me, not they frustrate me. Because maturity transforms how you interpret God's actions. What once felt like control begins to feel like care. What once felt like loss begins to look like leading. You start recognizing that his no is as loving as his yes. That's the kind of comfort only trust can produce. There's also a deeper message hidden here. The rod and staff symbolize authority and guidance, the word and the spirit. The rod represents scripture, the unshakable truth that confronts lies and drives away deception. The staff represents the Holy Spirit, who gently leads, convicts, and restores. Together they keep your soul balanced. Truth without the spirit becomes harsh. The spirit without truth becomes unstable. But when both operate together, you walk in power and peace. Many people want comfort but reject truth. They want inspiration but resist instruction. But true comfort is found where word and spirit meet, where revelation becomes relationship. The shepherd doesn't comfort by removing danger. He comforts by revealing his presence within it. The rod keeps what's around you in order. The staff keeps what's within you aligned. And that's what David discovered. Comfort isn't the absence of conflict. It's the assurance of companionship. It's the realization that even in chaos, God's authority and guidance never leave your side. When you know that, you stop fearing correction. You begin to crave it because you understand that every adjustment draws you closer to safety. So when you look back over your life, the closed doors, the ended relationships, the divine interruptions, see them for what they were, the shepherd's rod and staff at work. They weren't moments of rejection, they were moments of rescue. The shepherd who defends also directs. The same hand that holds the rod of power also wields the staff of grace. And when you finally understand that balance, you realize what David meant. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Because comfort is not found in a life free of trouble. It's found in a heart fully led.